Do you hear my phone ringing, by the way?
No.
Okay, good. Do you know I have a phone booth in my basement?
What?
I can't believe I didn't point this out to you when you visited the other week.
A phone booth?
I have, yes, an actual analog, rotary-dialed, full-sized phone booth that is constructed in my basement.
And you didn't show this to me when I was in your basement.
I feel really... So it's not a Thomason because it's functional. You can actually make calls on this. Yeah, man, that was a missed opportunity. So when we bought the house, it was already here. And it was actually part of the purchase and sale agreement for the previous owners that they wanted to extract and take it with them. But they couldn't figure out how to do it, and so they just left it here. And so we have a phone booth.
We should be recording the podcast through there. I had a message from a listener.
Ooh.
Asking a question.
Okay, via which communications avenue?
Through Reddit.
Would you say that Reddit is the primary mechanism through which our listeners ought to contact us? Is that where we're listening primarily?
That's a good place to reach us. Facebook, Twitter, and our website is also good.
Yeah, whatever floats your boat.
Right.
Okay, sweet. So you had a message.
So I had a question from user Unpleasant Thoughts. He was wondering if we had seen Black Mirror.
So my exposure to Black Mirror was from Hello Internet's review of it.
Yes, they've talked about it quite a bit on there, but I have not seen it. I don't know if you've seen it.
I have not seen it, and I don't plan to.
And you don't plan to? Okay. So there we go.
Okay, so this is a good example of something that is probably, based on the reviews I've heard, it sounds like it's very creative, very well produced, very innovative. I think they sort of described it as a modern Twilight Zone in terms of exploration of ideas and each episode being kind of a vignette. And Twilight Zone is one of my favorite shows of all time. However, the darkness and the extremeness of the content, as they've described it, is not something that I would want to consume at all. Again, like, I always go back to, I'm not making a moral judgment in terms of rightness or wrongness. I just, from a personal point of view, at this stage of my mental hygiene in terms of the kinds of input that I am crafting into my mind, I can't take that level of intensity.
Yeah, you like to filter your inputs.
Yeah, like, and I really struggle with expressing it. Like, Doctor Who, for example, has a certain limit to how explicit the content gets. They have monsters and they fight and all that, but it's ostensibly, if not explicitly, a kid show, right? And they sort of don't bump past a PG-13-esque kind of rating.
Right.
And, not that all the content I consume needs to be like kitty, but like, I think I was mentioning before that sometimes if I'm going to sleep and there's some intense murder mystery show on and they're doing the murder body CSI kind of analysis, like, I just don't, it just doesn't feel like something I want to be rolling around in my head. You know what I mean?
You don't want those unpleasant thoughts.
Yeah. So, I totally acknowledge that's a potential, like, that's an immaturity, or that's I'm missing out on things. But I'm kind of cool. I'm all right with that. How about yourself? Do you find yourself when you're sitting down and watching a movie or a TV show or other kinds of entertainment content that there's some line of explicitness or intensity, whether in terms of violence or other types of content that you just don't want to, no matter how well or creatively done, you just don't want to consume, or do you not have that?
Not very often, but occasionally. The one instance I can think of recently where that's been the case is that I tried watching The Walking Dead.
Okay.
And I watched one episode and I said, there's no way I'm ever going to enjoy this. I'm not going to bother with it.
Because it's too explicitly violent?
Yes and no. I think the problem I have with zombie movies is that they're obviously violent, but they use the excuse that they're zombies to be excessively violent in a way that you wouldn't be against living humans. Oh, it's okay. We're just shooting zombies in the head, and that we can enjoy this because wink, wink, they're just zombies.
Right.
It feels like the audience is meant to enjoy seeing people get shot in the head all the time.
Right. It's like an anesthetizing of the experience. And so it takes the safety off and says, hey, audience, there's some virile, base, animalistic aspect of your psyche that actually enjoys watching extreme violence. But you know it's not right. And so most of the time you don't allow yourself. But here's a way that you can enjoy it. Go for it.
Yeah. It made me feel a little oogie, so I just never bothered after the first episode.
Yeah. Do you play video games, Tom, in general?
I do not know.
Have you seen some of the more extremely violent video games of the modern era?
Just, accidentally. I don't seek these things out, but I'm kind of vaguely aware of how awful they are.
I remember years ago, I had the fortune to watch. I can't remember if I actually played it. If I did, it was for like 10 seconds. Grand Theft Auto. Have you ever heard of this game?
Yeah, I've heard of it. I've never played it.
So it was the first experience I had of such extreme amorality in a video game that I realized, wow, video games have now passed me by.
Yeah.
The game starts out and you're a character and you run up to a car and you rip the driver out of the car and throw them on the ground and steal their car and go off on a extravaganza of crime and violence. And it's similar to the zombie thing you were just talking about, where it's a video game. Nobody was actually hurt when you pulled that pixel out of the other pixel, and so it's it's okay. It gives you this excuse to be act extremely violent. And I don't want to go down the road of violent video games cause actual violence.
Yeah, I don't think that either. But that's not something I want to engage in because I don't get the enjoyment out of it that some people do. Yeah,
it's like, okay, here's an aspect of myself. Do I want to indulge in it? And then making the decision, no, I don't.
I've pretty much excised all my video game playing like 10 years ago. I haven't really done much at all in the last 10 years. All my gaming's been analog in nature, whether it be board games or role-playing games and stuff like that.
Yeah, although, now that I have this smartphone and I'm 2 steps away from having the Oculus Rift strapped to my head 24/7. I'm not sure how much I'll be able to resist that.
The one video game that has caught my attention the past 10 years that I did spend a little time with, I'm sure you're aware of it, being a parent, is Minecraft.
Yes. I think of that as one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum, and again, I'm very novice in my video game knowledge, so I may be dating myself here, but there's this other game, Call of Duty.
Yeah.
And the reason why these are examples of opposite poles of ways to run a game is Call of Duty is very rigidly narratively driven. So you're a soldier and you're following the story, and you do have a certain level of freedom in terms of what you're doing within each scene, but the story is fairly well scripted and defined, and so you're sort of going along. And whereas in Minecraft, it's this open-ended canvas,
right?
And it gives you the ability to create different things, and you're given it as a playground for your creativity. And so it's much more empowered of the user in terms of where you want to go with it.
I spent a little time with that, and I enjoyed that, but that too fell by the wayside.
A lot of these things I just feel like I don't have time for.
Yeah.
It's actually very similar to a lot of other interests, even that aren't gaming, that are presented to me by my friends and family of, oh, you would love this TV show. Oh, you would love this video game. Oh, you would love this role-playing game. Oh, you would love... And I'm sure I probably would. I just don't have the extra clicks in order to devote to an interest just for the purpose of enjoyment, right?
Yeah.
There's only so much time in the day, and there's needs and there's other things to do. And I mean, Two Geeks takes about 300 hours a week, Tom. So, I mean...
So there's probably a segment of our audience are asking themselves, why do these guys call themselves geeks when they don't enjoy smartphones, they don't play video games, they don't like The Walking Dead or stuff like that? Right.
So I think, Tom, it's time to take the power back. It's time to take the word back. So I feel like the word geek has gone... I feel like we are at the end of phase 2 of the word geek in terms of societal understanding and conception. So phase 1 was a very negative association. It was a and this was when we were growing up. That geek is kind of very socially inept, very an unusual interest in electronics or things that are not of the mainstream culture, and indicative of something not just non-mainstream, but something aberrant and kind of an implication of something wrong, something underdeveloped, and very much a disparaging term. I don't have to sing you phrases from Rush's Subdivisions, but that was.
Please don't.
And then somewhere along the line, I think that this is probably associated with the rise of the internet and Silicon Valley and technology in the 90s. Geek became chic. It became accepted. It became more mainstream, okay, to be and to embrace as at least an acceptable aspect of some. It's like the tribe of geek went from being persecuted to at least being accepted.
Yeah,
in the overall flow of it.
And a lot of the young people these days grew up in that environment, and so they don't remember this past connotation of geek.
Right. So these kids today, Tom, they don't know how good they have it. They didn't understand that in 1985, we had to secure ourselves into our own rooms as we listened to Dr. Demento and Weird Al Yankovic, rolling our dice. Those kids in what's that popular 80s show with the Stranger Things?
Stranger Things, yeah.
Right? It's a fairly accurate depiction, and those kids were not the top of the social food chain.
As someone who lived through that time, Stranger Things gets the early 80s spot on. It's really well done in that aspect.
Yeah. So there's so that was era 1, and then era 2 we're kind of in now. So this is just speculation, but it gets back to your question of, well, are we really geeks if we don't embrace what you were just talking about, ultra technology and smartphones and digital everything and zombie movies? And I think that there is a broader definition of geek, and just in my own personal sense, is just loving something just for the sake of the thing.
Yes.
Like, you could love technology and a smartphone just because it's really cool and fascinating. And to me, the base level feeling there is just this like awe and wonder. And therefore this feeling of wanting to play with it and explore it just for itself and just kind of appreciating it for the beauty of itself. Somebody who loves hacking around with Unix doesn't love it specifically for the functions it can provide, but just how cool all the little pieces work together and all the interesting things you can do with it. And I think you can apply that to things that are not technology. So, there are birdwatcher geeks. I think that there are, there's book geeks. There's meta geeks. I would say my tribe, Tom, is the meta geek tribe. The act of self-reflection upon anything that you're paying attention to and going meta with your consciousness is certainly something that's useful and functional. But personally, I find just a great wonder and joy in the meta mechanism itself, as you have clearly observed.
Yep. I like to think that we're also analog geeks as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And embracing the things that geeks enjoyed in the pre-digital age.
Yeah, playing chess, for example, is a classic is a phase 1 geek associated activity, and that's certainly not purely digital experience. So yeah, I feel like there's a broader thing to be. We called our podcast 2-Bit Geeks. I think part of the association there is that we're not your classic, or at least what is currently
in the mainstream geek culture, right?
Yes,
but
yes.
there's still room for all of us.
Absolutely, yes. The tribe of geek, now that it has been accepted, should be able to expand into sub-tribes and have all that be accepted as well.
Yeah. And we're not necessarily looking down on those things either. It's just not something that's forefront in our mind as far as things that we enjoy in the geek world.
We all must join together in one great big geek kumbaya.
Yeah.
The gathering of the geek tribes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And part of that, I think, too, is expanding the preconception of the demographic diversity of geek. I mean, the phase one socially persecuted geek is an overly academically oriented young white male, right? And I think that there are certainly healthy tribes of geek from a much more diverse background of women and different races and different countries and different interests.
And that's certainly a positive development in how our modern culture has adopted geeks, is that it's become a lot more diverse, which is good. Absolutely.
In fact, harkening back a little bit to Force Awakens, I think that was a very conscious decision that was on the forefront of J.J. Abrams' mind as he was casting and putting characters that weren't your classic white male in the forefront.
Same with Rogue One. That was a very diverse cast, which was great to see.
Absolutely. I feel like there are some sci-fi universes that have consciously pushed these socially progressive, diverse bounds a step or two ahead of the mainstream culture, and that's something I feel a bit of pride in. You know, the classic Star Trek series.
Yeah. Star Trek was years ahead of everyone on these matters.
Yeah, and Lieutenant Uhura and Captain Kirk had the first interracial kiss on television, and that was during the 60s and the civil rights movement. So that was very relevant. There's a well-known story that Martin Luther King had a talk with Nichelle Nichols, the African-American actress who played Lieutenant Uhura, asking her to please stay on Star Trek when she was considering leaving, and that it was important for people to see a positive role model of a strong African-American female in the culture. And she did. And it was awesome. She was a trailblazer.
Yeah, representation matters.
That's another aspect that I've loved about Doctor Who. Doctor Who has always been... actually, I don't know. So you've seen more classic Doctor Who than I have. Has Doctor Who always been like that? I know in the reboot series, I've gotten a very strong sense that it's been very socially progressive in terms of being open and accepting of strong female characters, of people of different sexual orientations, of racial diversity. Has that always been the case, or do you think that that's more of an aspect of the reboot?
It's more of an aspect of the modern series. I mean, they certainly had strong female characters in some points in the past, but it wasn't always consistent.
Yeah, Sarah Jane Smith certainly had several seasons where she was very strong.
Yep. And Leela, of course.
Oh, yeah, dude. The Janie's Thorn.
Although they did have her run around in the skimpy outfit, too, so.
That's true. So speaking of Doctor Who, we've had a little bit of news recently.
Yeah, a few things. First off, sadly enough, we lost John Hurt recently.
Yes.
Who played the War Doctor in the recent anniversary program.
I loved him as the War Doctor. What was your...
Yeah, I thought he was great in that role as well. And that was a brainwave from Stephen Moffat, too. Make up for the fact that they couldn't get Christopher Eccleston into the special. So he came up with a way to work the Time War Doctor into the story.
Yeah, that was brilliant. So Eccleston was reticent to re-up?
Yeah, he hasn't shown any desire to be involved with the program since he left, unfortunately.
Yeah, so he had one season, and then I don't want to speak out of turn, but I believe that he initially didn't want to come back, and then he's kind of changed his mind, but by that point it was too late, and they had moved on to David Tennant.
Yeah, it's hard to know what the exact story is. There's been conflicting reports over the years.
Yeah, I have to admit, as big of a Doctor Who fan as I am, and I loved the David Tennant and Matt Smith years, I still haven't seen all the episodes of the first and only Eccleston season.
Oh, really? Okay.
Because I had gone back to watch the Eccleston episodes only after having seen the David Tennant and the Matt Smith seasons. Mm-hmm. And some of those episodes and for those two Doctors are really strong. I mean, for my money, some of the best Doctor Who has ever done are those two Doctors. So then going back and looking at the Eccleston episodes, they feel really uneven and plodding. It's understandable because they're just starting out and getting their feet wet. But yeah, I had a hard time connecting in with him.
Yeah, they hadn't found their particular style yet. And almost immediately after it started, Eccleston left again. So the new show didn't really find its way until I think Tennant took on it. Yeah.
So, no, I loved the John Hurt War Doctor. That was in the 50th year anniversary episode?
Yeah.
Is that what that was, right? Yep. Where they had the fantastic Tom Baker cameo at the end as well?
That's right.
Oh, I love that. It was so good. So you had that is one of the crowning jewels of the reboot, because you had the two amazing doctors in Tennant and Smith, and you had John Hurt, and then you have Tom Baker at the end, and it's a really great story.
They really did a good job on that one. They pulled that one off.
Yeah, that was really, really good. So John Hurt. So what else did you remember John Hurt from that you had appreciated him from?
Oh, Alien, of course.
Right, and as a result, Tom, Spaceballs. Don't forget that John Hurt was in Spaceballs.
Was he? I haven't seen Spaceballs since the 80s, so I have no idea.
John Hurt was in Spaceballs as John Hurt. There was a brief scene of him with the alien coming out, and that was probably the highlight of his career. But so Alien. He was also Ollivander in the Harry Potter movies. Yeah,
I'm not into Harry Potter either, so that's another point against my geek cred, I guess.
Yeah. So Tom, a slight tangent there. So you've talked before about how you are not a fan of the Harry Potter wand and magic business. However, I don't understand why, because so you're into the Marvel stuff. I mean,
yeah,
dudes flying around with capes with like ridiculous powers, right? I mean, and you do the all-you-can-eat Marvel comic thing on the iPad, right?
Yeah.
So you certainly have no bones about indulging in that kind of fantasy genre. So what is it about wands and magic that is so off-putting to you?
Well, I don't know if I have anything particularly against it. It just hasn't risen to the top of my list of things to watch. I think I've seen like the first two Harry Potter movies, but it didn't hold my attention enough to watch anymore, and I haven't read any of the books.
Okay, as somebody who has seen all the movies, I'll say that there's kind of three phases of feel to the movies. The first two are very young kid movies. Yeah. And this is reflective in the books as well. The first two books of the 7-book series are written in a style that are much more to a younger crowd. And the director was the same for the first two movies, Christopher Columbus. And then movies, I would say 3, 4, and 5, I believe they had different directors, but these were sort of the mid-range books before the extended final dark battle takes place at the end in books 6 and 7.
Yeah.
And I feel like those are the strongest individual movies. In fact, my favorite is probably the third one. It's called The Prisoner of Azkaban. So if you were ever to just pick out one of the 7 movies that you were going to give another chance to, I think it's a good story. It has good characters. It has less narrative responsibility because it doesn't have to introduce the whole universe.
Yeah.
It's not wrapping up in some huge epic clash. So it has a decent amount of freedom to stretch.
Well, I'll probably binge watch all of them in order sometime. I just haven't got to it yet.
Yeah, I've also read all the books, and I feel like book 3 is among the strongest as well. So yeah, okay. So you don't have a particular. You're not going to be into the wands thing. You're open to the magic.
I'm open to it, although at first glance it doesn't look like something that particularly appeals to me.
Right.
But I'm willing to give it a shake.
Yeah,
since it's universally loved by a lot of people.
So John, in the John Hurt connection, he is the owner of the wand shop, and so he's a minor character, but he's a lot of fun in the character that he plays. So yeah, so John Hurt passes on.
Yeah.
What was the other John Hurt thing? So he was an alien.
He's also I don't know if you're aware of this, he's also done more Doctor Who besides the one that we saw on television.
Really? What else was he?
He's done a few audio dramas of Doctor Who as well. Are you familiar with Big Finish?
No, not at all.
It's a British company that makes audio dramas of various sci-fi and fantasy properties with original cast members.
Oh, wow.
From various TV shows. And they have the extensive Doctor Who audio drama series that bring back actors from the original classic series to record new adventures that are just done as, audio dramas, like a radio play.
Wow, that's interesting.
And John Hurt has done a few of those. I haven't heard any of his, but I've heard some of the other ones. They're worth checking out if you're a
Whovian.
A big Whovian, yeah. But so they've got Tom Baker, they've got Peter Davidson, they've got Colin Baker, they've got Sylvester McCoy.
Wow.
They've even got a few David Tennant and Catherine Tate audio dramas playing Doctor and Donna.
That's pretty wild that genre of thing would come back. I mean, it makes me think of the earliest days of radio with War of the Worlds and other radio dramas. And now in the era of digital content and podcasting and such, a resurgence in that medium. I was poking around some of the subreddits the other day, and there's a whole subreddit dedicated to the creation of and appreciation of audio drama. That's now much more accessible, via the podcasting medium.
Exactly.
So we haven't explored a lot of sound effects here, Tom. I wonder what we could integrate into 2-Bit Geeks.
Don't tempt me.
So with the Doctor Who thing, we have not yet mentioned the biggest piece of news.
Yeah. Yep. Peter Capaldi announced he's leaving after the next series that comes out.
And that will be his third season.
Yep. Which seems to be the standard of how long you stay at the show before you quit.
Yeah. So what's your general take on Capaldi? I mean, we're evaluating him 2/3 through his run here, but what's your feel for him?
My general take, the thing that was weird is that I had very low expectations for Matt Smith, but I adored him. I thought he was fantastic in the role. I had really high expectations for Peter Capaldi, and I've been kind of disappointed, I think, overall. Although I think his run so far suffered from some bad writing or just some uninteresting stories.
Yeah, I kind of feel like the evaluation of an actor, particularly an actor as iconic as Doctor Who, it's very difficult to tease out and separate from the writing and the showrunner that's taking place. It's like when you're trying to evaluate an athlete and you try and take out his or her performance from the team or the coach. It's very difficult to separate those two. Yeah, I feel similar, although I had a different set of expectations. So as you did, I loved Matt Smith and felt like some of the best that Doctor Who has ever done was with him. I thought he got some fantastic writing overall, and
I think he captured the character brilliantly as well.
Yeah, and I also loved David Tennant, although I felt like there were more uneven episodes that he had. But again, I feel like that was a result of the showrunner still getting up to speed with what their style was, and the writers that you work with can really affect the end products. But I loved both of those Doctors overall. And I had very low expectations for Peter Capaldi. I didn't really know him other than his character role in the Fires of Pompeii episode. Mm-hmm. And we were just coming off of 6 seasons of young, dashing, funny, clever expressions of Doctor Who, right? And this was the first return to a really old Doctor since John Pertwee, maybe? Certainly in the reboot, this was by far the oldest Doctor.
Yep.
And I felt like that the writers, especially in Capaldi's first season, were reacting to the uber whimsicalness of Matt Smith. I mean, a doctor that would throw a fez on his head and, have it get shot off by River Song. And I mean, there was just some dinosaurs on a spaceship? Yep. There were some capital W, capital H wacky hijinks that went on with Matt Smith. And I feel like they made a conscious effort to do a more serious, intense, dark, brooding Doctor as a reaction because they just didn't want to do Matt Smith version 2. Mm-hmm. And I think that was a mistake. Like I think that they forced him into a box that was not his strength, and I think he suffered as a result of it. I think by the end of Capaldi's first season, it started to turn a corner, and I really loved the actress who plays Mindy as the Master. I think she's brilliant. Missy, I'm sorry, not Mindy.
Oh yeah, that is a highlight definitely of the current run.
Yeah, so she's a fantastic foil to him, and I feel like they consciously tried to correct their thematic error at the beginning of Capaldi's second season, where he comes out with the guitar and the sunglass sonic screwdriver
Oh,
You didn't like that? So
no. First of all, I hate the sonic screwdriver to begin with. I think it's just a terrible
really
plot device. Yeah, and then just to put it on a sunglass was just too much for me. I couldn't take it.
You love Doctor Who, but you hate the sonic screwdriver.
I hate how it's used in the current series. It's just basically as his little sidearm problem solver. It gets him out of jail whenever he wants. It was a lot less used in the classic series. It occasionally made an appearance every once in a while, but it wasn't a
right.
We have to show the sonic screwdriver every episode, and woo, here it is.
Well, the kids, you got to sell the toys, Tom.
Yeah. I don't really care for it, though.
I also am very forgiving in general, and in Doctor Who, probably much more so, about plot consistency and suspension of disbelief. Right. When I sit down to watch Doctor Who, I'm not looking for an intense, extremely well fleshed out, uber realistic,
right,
compelling narrative. It's a
children's program, but it's nice when you have those things, though.
Yes, and they can definitely do that. But as a result, if they're locked in some spaceship and he just whips out the sonic screwdriver and it's like whatever. I'm cool with that.
I just don't like it when it does things that doesn't even make sense that sonic waves would affect whatsoever.
Right. Have they ever really explained though that it's truly sonic, like just an audio wave kind of thing?
That's how it behaved in the classic series. Now he basically can just stick it at a computer and have it reprogram itself.
But yeah, no, it's become an all-purpose tricorder of uber power that works on everything except wood.
Yeah, and then why would you even put it in a pair of sunglasses? That was just totally bizarre.
So I was forgiving of that because I felt like it was an extreme reaction. I felt like that was the writer saying, "We're sorry we made this dude so serious. Like we're going to let him stretch out and be more whimsical. It's we're going to give this another go." And I feel like overall his last season was much stronger. I really loved the finale. I'm gonna space on the name of the episode. Heaven Sent, Hell Bent.
Yeah,
where he's trapped in the Time Lord trap, and he has to get out. That was really strong. And the return to Gallifrey, I thought that was all really strong.
Yeah.
So I think now that the pressure's off and he knows he's leaving, and there aren't these sort of issues floating around, I feel like that there's a potential for a really strong season upcoming. Plus, this is going to be Stephen Moffat's last season as a showrunner.
Yeah. I've kind of had a mixed reaction to Moffat as well. I think he's done a lot of good things with the series, especially with the Matt Smith stories. But he also a lot of the stories became way too convoluted and heavily plotted.
Do you mean with the Rory and Amy and River Song kind of extended
drama that went on forever? Yeah. The one good thing that Moffat did that I really appreciated, as far as I can tell, he's the first showrunner in the series history that really seemed to get that the Doctor is a time traveler and can travel in time, and some of his stories took that into account, and more so than any other showrunner has, just traveling back and forth in time within the span of the story itself.
Right.
So I don't know much about Chris Chibnall, who's taking over. He's best known from the series Broadchurch, which I haven't seen. I don't know if you've seen that.
No, not at all.
Yeah, but that starred David Tennant in it. So yeah. And plus, he's written for Doctor Who a few times as well.
I have heard rumors that we talked a little bit about the Disney management of the Star Wars franchise, and this is the BBC management of the Doctor Who franchise, which is a big, huge, moneymaker for them. I have heard rumors that there's a desire to return it back to the sort of more classic David Tennant, young, dashing male with the female companion that would be more accessible to a larger global audience. I guess Doctor Who has become more globally distributed, and so it will always be English, but there's a Peter Capaldi in his age is not the most accessible character type for quote unquote these kids today. So
I know a lot of Americans and others have had trouble with his accent as well.
Oh yeah, we haven't hit on that. So I love the fact that they tried that, but so to me this was a mistake in terms of at least accessing the American and larger audience, which is it doesn't matter how awesome your music is. If people can't hear it, you're going to lose something. And so it doesn't matter what you say. If people can't follow along, especially with the style of dialogue that Doctor Who has, right, which is very rapid and back and forth and zany, wacky, kooky. I had a lot of trouble with his accent. We have the subtitles on when we watch it as a family at home, and it's just. I love a Scottish accent, but it's harder to understand.
Yeah, I can't say I've had the same experience, but I've watched a lot of British television, so I'm used to a lot of the regional British accents.
Yeah, you're more acclimated to that.
So, what kind of direction do you think they should go with the next person they cast as the Doctor? I mean, most significantly, Moffat has clearly set up the possibility that a Time Lord can change genders when they regenerate.
Yes, that's been clearly established that would be, so no problem in the canon. Going what we were just talking about in terms of like the BBC management of the franchise.
Yeah. I
would be surprised if they went with a female Doctor, because I just think at the end of the day, they would consider it less marketable, less classically marketable. I would love to see it. I'm certainly totally open to it. I think it's very character dependent. I don't really care the Doctor's male, female, old, young, black, white, whatever. Like I want an awesome actor with awesome writing.
You have anyone in mind?
No, not at all. I don't really. I mean, I don't follow British acting enough in order to even know. Yeah. There's probably been speculation. In fact, just doing the little R&D for our talk here, there's odds that are placed in the bookmakers about.
Yeah, I've seen these. Yeah.
So what does the betting public have to say about it?
I'm looking at it now. I mean, these odds obviously change, but as of what I'm looking at, the article I'm looking at now from the Independent, the odds they have for the top odds they have for the next Doctor Who was for Ben Whishaw at 5-1. He's best known as playing the young Q in the latest James Bond movies.
Okay.
Do you know that actor?
No, not at all.
I'm not so sure if I'm a big fan of that casting decision, if that comes to be. But at 6-1, they have Richard Ayoade. I don't know if you know him either.
No.
He's best known as playing Moss from the IT Crowd. I don't know if you've ever seen that program.
Yeah, Tom, I have very little knowledge and connection to this thing that you humans call culture.
Yeah, I'd like to see Richard Ayoade as the Doctor. Although he's a comic actor. I don't know if he does drama. But they also have Rory Kinnear at 7-1 and Miranda Hart as their top woman possibility at 8-1.
Who's Miranda Hart?
She's another British comic actor. Her shtick is basically she's like very posh and abnormally tall. So I don't know if that would be a good fit either.
So as you were running through those, and just one possibility popped to mind. What do you think of Emma Watson?
Emma Watson. Now she's Harry Potter, right?
She's Hermione. That's where she got famous, but she's been in several other big movies since then. She's English. She's young. I think it's probably a bit beneath her actress level at this point. She could pretty much command any movie she wants, and so going into a TV series, unless she was really into it, it would be a sideways career move for her. But that would be fun.
Yeah, she might be a little young.
Yeah, although, compared to what Capaldi was, it would certainly be a change, right?
Yep. The one other woman who's getting a lot of speculation is Olivia Colman, who is actually a fantastic actor. So that's one I could get behind. It's probably someone else you don't know.
No, absolutely. This whole culture thing. Yeah. You could just drop the pop prefix from culture in my mind. It's all just...
Yeah. See, I'm kind of the same way. I don't know hardly anything about American television, but I know a little bit about British television because that's mostly what I watch when I have to watch television.
You really consciously stick your head outside of the U.S. Bubble, eh?
I try to. Yes.
Yeah. So speaking of new TV and new movies, we were talking about some of the problems with Rogue One, and one of my complaints was the labels of the planets, right? And how it was, in my experience, evocative of the original Dune, where they handed in the 80s, the Dino De Laurentiis version, where they handed you out literally a piece of paper with terminology, and what a disaster that was, and how unfortunate that was. Because if you think of classic sci-fi novels, Dune is close to the top of the list, along with Foundation and Ender's Game and other such things. And I read this week that Dune is going to be redone, and it's going to be directed by the director who directed Arrival.
That's right. I did see that, yeah.
And I will attempt to butcher his name.
Good luck.
Denis Villeneuve.
That is very wrong.
Is that a fair butcher?
That's a very good butcher, yeah.
My apologies to our French-speaking dear listeners. He is also directing the reboot of, I shouldn't say the reboot, the next episode of Blade Runner. Blade Runner is an uber classic of sci-fi movies, so to know that that's in good hands and that Dune is in good hands after having seen Arrival, that's a good indication. By the way, just a quick Arrival follow-up. I remember in our original review, you were concerned that when you saw it, there was almost nobody in the theater, and so what kind of reception this would get. So it ended up being a box office success, and it was, I believe, nominated as for Best Picture.
It was, yeah. I think it was actually re-released after the nominations came out to try to capitalize on that.
Okay, yeah. So that was excellent.
I don't know anything about Dune, though. I've never seen the original movie, and I haven't read the books, so that's another thing I'm maybe suspiciously uninformed about.
There was a TV miniseries that the Sci-Fi Channel produced, which, according to the Two Geeks, was a much better representation of the books than the movie was. I actually haven't read all the books. My dad was way into that series and tried to get me to read it.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I think he told me to read it once too.
Quick bit of follow-up that you can insert anywhere, Tom?
Yeah.
So I noted this in the show notes, but just a quick bit of follow-up to our technology anxiety episode, episode 6, where I had noted that I didn't want to be a Quaker and completely disavow myself of all technology.
That's right. We get to be pedantic again here.
Yes, we do. And I feel it's very important because I made a big mistake. And what I was really mentally referring to were the Amish who disavow themselves of modern technology. The Quakers, as I found out from a very quick Google search, have absolutely no problem with technology. Yep. And they're actually not a very conservative religion. They're totally cool. And so I didn't mean to diss the Quakers, and I wanted to make sure that I got it out there that as we're talking extemporaneously here, it's easy to pull in a concept from one's mind that associates with something. And then when you reality check that against the true knowledge base of the world, you find a dissociation. So
yes, the Amish and the Quakers are not the same.
Yes, absolutely. So kudos to the Quakers, all the Quaker dear listeners. You are totally cool.
Yeah. Do you think we have any Amish listeners?
Very unlikely, but you never know. I mean, they could hear it at the store. You know, they're buying some stuff, and who knows? We totally invite any Amish to come out and join the podcast. Yep. I'm not sure how you'd
write us a letter.
All right.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening. Don't forget, if you like what we're doing, please leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you download your podcasts, and help get the word out by sharing us on social media. We thank you for your support.